In today's video, I'm going to be addressing some of the most frequently asked questions that the customer experience team receives specifically on the ETS line of sanders. Now, the first question deals with stroke size of the sanders. So I've got multiple different options. This is not all inclusive, but I have a wide variety of the ETS line of sanders that is offered by Festool, starting with the ETS 125, then going into the EC models, this being an ETS EC 125, ETS EC 150/5, and then now joined by the ETS C2, which is the cordless offering in both a 125 and a 150. Now, each one of these has a slightly different stroke size, this being a 2mm stroke, 3mm, 5mm stroke, 3mm, 5mm. So how do you know which one is right for you? It really depends on what exactly it is that you're doing and how much you want to be sanding. With the higher stroke size means the sander is going to be more aggressive, is going to remove more material faster than something like this. Now, a 5-stroke sander may not be the best decision for all applications. And let me give you a real-world example. Let's say that you were sanding plywood that had a very thin veneer. While you can do it with a more aggressive 5-stroke sander, such as this or this cordless offering, it may be a better idea to use something with like a 3, or in this case, a 2mm stroke, because it is not going to be as aggressive. Therefore, you will be able to sand a little bit longer, and it might protect the piece that you are trying to sand. Now, on the flip side of that, if you're somebody that's doing a lot of hardwood tables or something like that, and you need to be a little bit more aggressive with your sanding, then something like a 5mm stroke may be a better option because it's going to get the job done quite a bit faster, and you don't run that risk of burning through the material like you would on plywood. Number 2, sanding pads. Why are there so many? What do they all do? And a brief explanation of each. So really with Festool sanders, it's broken down into 3 categories. We have sanding pads, we have interface pads, and we have what's called a protection pad. So let's talk about what each one is really for. So these are the sanding pads that actually come with the sanders. Typically when you buy a Festool sander, it is going to come with the black standard pad. It's kind of a general use. You can pretty much use it in all applications. Then you have the blue, which is a hard pad, and then you have the gray, which is considered the super soft pad. Right off the bat, you'll see that the super soft is far thicker and obviously much softer, and then you have a much more firm pad here. So what are the benefits to each pad? While you can get by with most applications with the standard pad that comes with it, there might be applications such as rounded corners where it may make more sense to do something like this, where it's a little bit softer and will actually form to those contours that you're trying to sand, as where if I'm doing large flat tabletops, for instance, where I want to keep really, really sharp edges and I'm trying to flatten it out perfectly flat, that's where a harder pad is going to come in more useful. Now that same logic applies to interface pads. What you'll see here is we have a nice thick foam interface pad, and then we have some thinner interface pads that can actually be stacked to give you different profiles. Now, the way that these interface pads work, same logic as with these pads, is we want to be able to conform to a particular shape or profile that we're trying to do. Well, without having to change the actual pad, we can add these interface pads by simply attaching it to the hook and loop and then applying our paper to that. And then you'll see we have a lot more freedom to go over a rounded profile, and it's actually going to be a lot more consistent on that profile because it's conforming to it. Another one of the big benefits to these interface pads is it's basically acting as a dampening agent between the sandpaper and the sander itself. And it'll also assist with things like burning through edges of material because you're not applying as much pressure to that one because it does have a little bit of give. And finally, we'll talk about the protection pad. Now, the protection pad has one main goal, and that is to protect the pad that comes with your sander. And it is vital when you're using a paper like this. This is Granat net. It is a mesh net style paper. And what we don't want is we don't want to be wearing down the hook and loop system that is on the pad. We want there to be a lot more longevity in that pad so we don't have to replace the pad. That is where this comes into play. These are sold in packs of 2, and they come in various sizes. They come for all the different sanders. This simply places on the disc like that, and then you can take your paper and attach your paper directly to that protection pad. And that is going to prolong the life of whatever pad it is that you're using when you're utilizing this style of paper. The next question that I want to address is the use of the right angle attachment for the ETS 125 sanders and the compatibility. So we'll start off with the compatibility. This is compatible with the ETS 125 or the ETS C 125, which is this sander but cordless. Now this has become an incredibly handy addition to the ETS 125, which is already a great sander, but it expands its capabilities. Now this applies very quickly and easily to the ETS 125 through 2 Allen screws. Once you have it attached, it gives you the ability to sand things at a perfect 90-degree edge or anything from 90 to 45 degrees. So when you need to, say, sand the beveled edge of a project, you have the ability to do that by being able to sand at 45, 50, 55, and so on. It can also be incredibly helpful if you're trying to round over profiles on, say, the corner of a table or whatever project you're working on. So if you want the benefits of this great addition, then you need to make sure you're using it on an ETS 125 or an ETS C 125. Now we'll move on to the newest addition to Festool's sander lineup, and that is the ETS C2. And that goes with the next question of what are the benefits of a cordless sander? And really this boils down to 2 main features. One is obviously going to be personal preference. Is that something that is important to you, to have the ability to have a cordless sander? But more importantly, it's the freedom to be able to take the sander wherever you want, no matter the conditions. Now this can either be used with the dust bag that comes with it and still get phenomenal dust collection, or it can be hooked up to a hose just like you would any other Festool sander. Now you might be thinking, well, if I'm hooking up the hose to it, why wouldn't I just want to hook up power to it? Well, the nice thing is that this gives you the ability to do both. And quite frankly, having a hose that is moving around with you is a lot less likely to get caught up on whatever it is that you're working on as, say, a power cord. So it does give you that convenience that if you need it, you can go wherever you need to go, you can sand wherever you need to sand, and you're not relying on power. And finally, one of the most common questions is, which sander should I buy? Well, it's not a real simple question to answer because there are so many different offerings, not only within the ETS line, but from Festool in general. And they all have their pros and cons and are all heavily based off how you work, what projects you're doing, and what applications you need it for. If I was going to give my personal opinion on which sander I think is the best all-around sander, it would be the ETS EC 150/5. But that may not be the best option for everybody. While it might be impossible for me to tell everybody what it is that they need, if you want to go back and watch a previous video that I did in this series where I actually did a side-by-side comparison discussing all the different sander options that Festool offers, there'll be a link to that video down in the video description. So in this video, I covered a lot of the common questions that the customer experience team receives on a daily basis. Hopefully you found the information helpful and it will assist with your next purchase of a Festool sander. Thanks.